when I ride a motorcycle, I want it to be as far from a car driving experience as possible. And that's what I've loved about having the CRF300L Rally around, is I hop on it and I feel like, oh, okay, we're going out to have fun. We're going out to not be like a car. We're gonna go and have a very unique riding experience. Hey everybody, it's Charlie from Daily Motor. And for the last 2 months, I've been spending time with the 2023 Honda CRF300L Rally. This is a bike that I've been really curious about for a number of years. My motorcycle history starts off on a Honda CRF230 dirt bike, and then as I got into street riding, I had a Ninja 650, and then moved on to a V-Strom 650, which I kept pretty much until we moved out here to California. It proved to be easier to sell the bike out in Michigan and then move on to something here. So now that I'm out here and I've got some of the best riding roads in the country and mountains right in my backyard, which we're going to go and do some exploring in here today a little bit. There's going to be more footage that you're going to see dropped in that I've shot throughout my time with the Honda. Through all that, I've been curious, how dual sport should I go? What on the spectrum from all the way street bike to all the way dirt bike, where is best for me to land in order to have a bike that I can enjoy riding around for little spurts around town, that I can go on longer trips on, that I can take off-road, that I can do life with, essentially the most that I can do with a single bike. And I often kept coming back to the CRF300L Rally. So I reached out to Honda. I said, hey, please let me spend some time with this bike. I'm really curious about it, because you read so much. You read, some people are like, oh, this is the best beginner bike you can have. This is the best do-it-all bike. You got to get yourself a Rally. And other people are like, oh, it's too slow. The suspension's too soft. It's too heavy for what it is. Don't bother with it. I just had to experience it for myself. And I got to say, overall, it's coming in with a really high praise from me. I've really enjoyed having my time with the bike, but I do have some answers to that beginner bike question and kind of the if you should go with it for your main bike. So we're going to go for a little ride today. We're going to talk about some of those things, experience riding the bike. I'm also going to drop in a lot of photos and footage from my time with the bike. I've taken it into a lot of cool places and had a lot of fun with it. And the biggest thing I can say, wrapping up my time with the bike, is that I'm going to miss it. I'm really going to miss this bike, and it could see future in my personal stable, I'll tell you that much. Not going to do a huge spec dump for you, just kind of the things you need to know as we're talking about them. But for those of you who are not in the know, this bike was refreshed, I want to say for 2021, with the 286cc single-cylinder motor. So a little bit of extra displacement, giving it a little bit of extra power. Still not a ton, but it does make it so you can cruise along safely at about 75 miles per hour highway speeds, even if there's a little bit of an incline or a little bit of a headwind. And a mixture of the gearing and the power of the engine allows you to do that without really making it scream. I mean, it's definitely singing, but it can do it, and I'm sure it's better than the 250 was. The Rally Edition over the standard one gives you some extra plastics, a windshield that is not height adjustable. We're going to talk about that on the ride. Some hand guards, which have been nice to keep wind off of my hands. It gives you a different headlight. It also gives you a 3.4 gallon fuel tank, which has definitely been nice. We're going to talk about that a little bit as well as we ride. And it adds on a little bit of weight. This one we're looking at about 313 pounds. You can get either the base CRF300L or the Rally Edition with ABS, which is probably how I would spec it. I'm a big fan of ABS as a safety feature, especially considering, even though I do like to ride off-road, most of my riding and most of my at-risk riding, I should say, is on the street. If I'm at risk of having a serious accident and really hurting myself, it's probably going to be at highway speeds. Whereas if the ABS is accidentally on and interrupts me from braking off-road, I'm probably only going like 20, 30 miles per hour and going to fall into the dirt. That's just my perspective on it. I know ABS is a decisive issue, so that's why it's cool that Honda offers both of them. The bike you're looking at right here is about $6,700 after MSRP and destination and assembly costs, if you will. You're going to be paying more than that at a dealer after you tack on title and tax and dealer prep fees. But Honda says it should cost about $6,700, so that's what we have to go with for our review price. Speaking of safety, talking ABS, I also ride with this Helite airbag vest. This is actually not a vest, this is a backpack. I'm so used to saying vest, but this is the Helite airbag backpack, and I'm just now realizing that I forgot my spare batteries for my GoPro. So This review might necessitate a trip to the house. We'll see. I'm gonna have to make it quick. What this does is there's no tether to the bike. It's just powered electronically. It uses GPS and sensors to inflate this around me if I were to have an crash. And that did happen to me once before I got the Helite products, and I wish I did have them because it would have protected me some more in my core and in my head area. But you simply throw it on, and this isn't even exactly a sponsored video, but this is just a product that Helite gave me that I love to wear. I love having it on. It just gives me that extra safety blanket, and because it's a functional backpack, it adds to the usability on the CRF, because as you see it, we've got no sort of storage on this bike other than a small lockable container there and a helmet lock there, which has been nice to have for errand running. But with this big Helite backpack, I can throw things in the back of it, and I also have my water bladder, which is important when you're shooting videos because you do become quite parched. Alyssa has ridden on the back of this bike with me. She didn't super enjoy it. It was a pretty quick ride. You can do it, but it's not like the V-Strom where she was nice and comfortable and had a bunch of places to hold on to and everything. I know some people like the CRF over the KLX from Kawasaki because the gauge is a little more advanced, gives you a gear counter, which you don't need, but it is nice to have because you're cruising along on the road and then you're coming up to a stop or something, or you're coming up to a corner maybe and you're like, what gear am I in? I want to see how much I should downshift here. It's nice to have. Fuel injection for these newer 300 models. So regardless of altitude or temperature, you're going to get just that right air-fuel mixture. I have not spent time on the Kawasaki, so I'm not going to do a ton of comparison here. But I have heard that the low-down torque is better on the Honda, which I can certainly attest to. Putzing around town, it is gutsy. Not fast, but gutsy. Speaking of comparisons though, right after this I am going to go back and pull out the BMW G310 GS and shoot a comparison video. So if you're kind of one of those beginner bike shoppers and you're wondering which one of those two you should get, I think the answer kind of might surprise you because it surprised me as I've been planning out these videos. The CRF300L Rally is not the best beginner bike. I'm going to tell you that right off the bat. It's tall, it can be cumbersome, taking it off-road and even riding it around town, getting your feet down and getting onto it in parking lots and having the suspension compressed down. It also, because of its very rudimentary suspension, adjusting the preload is fairly difficult. So outside of having it set at a dealer, you're probably not going to have a nice easy time doing preload adjustment as a beginner, or it's not like you can change it real easy, you have a passenger hop on back or anything like that. No, who I think the best market is for the 300L Rally is an intermediate rider who wants a bike for 50-50 usage. They want little compromise for off-road riding and little compromise for street riding. They're not too concerned about having a passenger, and they're not too concerned on doing highway schlogs. They're also not too concerned about going crazy fast, pulling their hair back, accelerating. They're not that concerned about looking cool. What they're most concerned about is the essence of a motorcycle. For me, when I ride a motorcycle, I want it to be as far from a car driving experience as possible. And that's what I've loved about having the CRF300L Rally around, is that I hop on it and it's this big, soft, tall, marshmallowy experience. And it's not super great at cruising on the highway, but that's, again, when I probably want to be in a car. And it's not super great at having Alyssa on the back, but again, we're getting more and more to the point where if we're going to go somewhere, we're probably just going to take a car. I had the pleasure of having this bike alongside the BMW K1600 Grand America recently, which is a very large touring motorcycle. And that bike was impressive, and it was nice for when Alyssa and I went and took a trip, but it was so cumbersome that it sort of lost, like I'm saying, that essence of motorcycling. It required work, if you will. It wasn't a smooth connection between my body and the machine. There was a disconnect there. What I've appreciated about this Honda is I hop on it and I feel like, oh, okay, we're going out to have fun. We're going out to not be like a car. We're gonna go and have a very unique riding experience. Remarkably, despite this small dirt bike style seat, I have been more comfortable on 4+ hour rides on this than I was on that BMW K1600. And I think a lot of it comes down to where the pressure points are on your bottom. I'm a fairly fit individual, not very large, about 5'10", 165 pounds, and the bones of my butt kind of sit right on the seat cushion. And not only that, but I'm moving around more on the seat. I can scooch and kind of make subtle adjustments that allow me to be comfortable for a longer period of time. Whereas when I was on the big, plushy, comfortable seat of the K1600, I was in one seating position for many hours at a time, and it resulted in me being a little less comfortable. So like I said, it's not rip your arms off fast by any means, but because it's still a lightweight two-wheeled machine, you can chuck it around in fun ways, and you do so at lower, safer speeds. You can full throttle it, row through 4 or 5 gears, and you're still barely breaking the speed limit on most larger US roads. Also, being this style motorcycle, you have a ton of peg clearance, so you can really lean this thing over and not worry about any sort of scraping. And again, there's just another way that I feel like it actually caters itself more toward more experienced riders than it does beginners, because beginners aren't going to be leaning a bike over that much anyway, and so they're not going to have to worry about peg scraping too much. A beginner would actually be better suited with tires that come on the bike that are a little bit better for kind of all sorts of riding, rather than these little bit knobbier tires that are gonna be vague on the road and maybe provide a little bit less confidence in inclement weather situations. Also, the levers are not adjustable, so again, if you're a beginner rider, you're more concerned about being comfortable because it's such a new experience. You want to make little things like grabbing the clutch and the front brake easy on yourself, and not having to adapt to situations, whereas in the CRF it's kind of like, all right, well, here's your clutch and your brake lever, get used to it. My complaints with the CRF are minimal, but one of them does come down to this windshield. It's obviously going to vary from rider to rider, but it just so happens that the way that I sit with my inseam and my height, I'm getting blasted with dirty air. So the air's coming right about here, and the turbulence is hitting me smack in the middle of my windshield. And it just makes the bike loud. That's all there is to it. If I were up here, it's quieter because it's nice, smooth, unbroken air. If I were down here, it's quieter because it's underneath the windshield. But it's not adjustable, so that air is just pelting me right where it's loud. And it makes it so if I'm going to ride the CRF for more than half an hour, and especially on any sort of highway roads or anything, I've got to have earplugs in. It's very uncomfortable to ride without earplugs on this bike at higher speeds. And it was really brought out by me getting this 310 GS from BMW that's got a lower windshield, and the air is unbroken when it's hitting me. It's perfectly clean and much quieter. Next complaint does come with suspension, and I know it's sort of, if you've watched a lot of CRF300L reviews, it's sort of beating a dead horse, but it's not only the softness of the suspension, which honestly I can get over that. I've ridden this on some really hard off-roading, and you kind of just stand up, and then when you do bottom out the suspension, you're fine. I mean, your legs sort of support you. But it also comes with the fact that adjusting the preload is a pain in the butt. If you're someone who's riding in a lot of different riding scenarios and situations, at least give us something that you can reach in with a tool you provide or something and do the preloading. A lot of the videos I've watched, you got to get metal bars out and hammer things loose and make adjustments. Honda's got top-notch engineers. They couldn't have figured out a way to give us just a little bit easier adjustment on that. And again, it's one thing for something like maybe the base CRF300L, but when you're talking the rally, you're going to be using it in a lot more riding situations, so why not give us one that is easier to adjust? I really appreciated having an external adjustment on my V-Strom where if Alyssa were hopping on the back or if I were loading it up with gear, just give it some clicks and then I'm on to that next riding situation. And again, when we're talking this being more of an intermediate level bike, that's people that might have a little bit more money to spend and they're going to be more willing to purchase something like this and then immediately throw on different suspension. But a beginner, you're not going to be spending your money that way. You don't want to purchase a bike that you've just got to go and change things on right away. And a beginner should be spending their money on gear and experiences and fuel rather than changing the suspension on their bike. So yeah, the suspension itself is totally fine to ride around with. It would just be nice if it were more easily adjustable. I have been impressed with the tires. I've ridden it in some deep sand, I've ridden it over sharp rocks, hard highway, a lot of different riding situations here, and the tires have really done a good job. I've been very pleased with them. We're going down this little bit of a dirt road here, but I'm going to cut to some footage I shot on some really tough riding that was actually right up, see that mountain way up at the top. I went all the way up there with this and it handled it well. Definitely finding out what first gear is for here on the CRF. Man. Crawler gear for sure. But I'm really thankful for it. Also thankful for these tires holding up. Knock on wood. Really sharp rock here. Going up this hill. Also pretty darn thankful for the 300L's larger fuel tank, because I did not expect to be out on the trail as long as I have been today. Had to end up backtracking. It's been an hour or so that we've been backtracking at this point, and I think we've still got an hour to go. So even though some of it is pretty slow going, definitely thankful for that fuel reserve in there over the standard model. I have felt the suspension weaknesses throughout the second half of this journey. It's definitely not something that you can't deal with and that isn't totally fine for the basic rider, but once you start picking up the pace and go over some of these hills just like this one right there, you definitely bottom it out. I need to look into some of my preload settings in the rear, but I think that's kind of just the nature of the beast with this bike. It's very springy too. It's very woo, woo, woo. Unless you're standing up and really absorbing with your knees, it creates a springy, spongy, marshmallowy effect. It's kind of fun in some ways. We got all that way to go still. Let's do it. Right there's the bottom out. Before we get wrapping this video up, check out some of these great photos too from various trips I took. So when I first got the bike, I took it directly from Honda headquarters to a nice long roundabout ride back home. Went down into Long Beach and saw the Queen Mary docked there, or Queen Mary 2 or whatever which one it is there. Just kind of getting used to the bike. I always like to take the bikes out at a nice, simple, safe ride and sort of get acclimated with them and start making my impressions. And then I did a lot of off-road exploring, kind of these little offshoots and trails around my neck of the woods here. Did that trip up the mountain. That was a long trip, turned out being a lot longer than I expected it to be, so that was a good bonding experience with the bike. And then I actually had my one accident with it as well. I went down to Wildemar off-road ORV area, I suppose, not too far from here, and I was coming down a hill, and something weird must have just happened with the front end, must have hit a weird rut, but I dumped the bike down to the side. I was totally fine. I kind of caught myself with my hand. It was probably only going 5-10 miles per hour, but the bike was fairly unscathed. But I do think the alignment is a little bit off in the steering now, so I got to get that in and get it checked. But we'll take a look at the side. I think I just got minor scuffing on some of the bits here, and maybe this handguard is a little off kilter, but other than that, it handled the fall well, which is definitely important if you're going to have a bike that you're regularly taking off-road. I also took the CRF out on a camping adventure last weekend. I put it on a little carrier on the back of the Super Duty and went out to some BLM land south of Joshua Tree National Park, and I camped and then went out and rode all day around on this bike, and I rode that thing long and hard. It was a 250-mile day of a mixture of on-road and off-road and through the national park, and my body was tired because of how hard I rode, but I could have kept going in terms of comfort on the bike. There's something to be said for the simplicity and kind of the way you sit on it and how easy and telepathic the bike is to ride. I mean, whether you're on dirt like this or you're on paved road, it's easy for an intermediate rider like me to just be natural with the bike. And if it's a wide range of riding styles like that, so that was a lot of fun to have it out in that sort of experience. Let's do some last little bits. I'm giving the bike back next week, so kind of having a little bit more fun here. Oh, it's so good that first gear is such a low tractor gear. In fact, a lot of times if I'm riding on the street, I start the bike off in second gear, unless I've got like a little bit of an uphill or something, but second gear just works totally fine to get you up and going, and first is saved more for these big uphills and really slow situations. Ooh, very rocky. Let's see, ground clearance has been good the whole time I've had this bike. Yeah, look at that, no problem. Clutch and shifter action has been so good too. I mean, the thing with a positive review on a product is a lot of times the basic merits are simply not even mentioned because the product handles them so well. If I'm reviewing a car that I really like and we're talking about the things it does well, what we're probably not even talking about is the basics. So it's kind of a given, I suppose, but still worth noting that all the basic motorcycle things the CRF is awesome for. So I'm glad that Honda makes it. I know that kind of sounds silly, but there are so many motorcycles. That's kind of the beauty of the motorcycling world, is that that's a dog. Whose dog is that? Okay, we're gonna just ride past you. All right. Interesting. Okay. Anyway, that's the beauty of the motorcycle world, is that we've got so much variety and it's so accessible in terms of the costs that a bike like this often gets overlooked for all the things it does well. And for someone who just wants to have a motorcycle that is always going to start up for them, is always going to be accessible with the dealer network, accessible with parts, cheap to maintain and to repair when you inevitably mess it up. I got 75 miles per gallon on our daily motor fuel economy test. It's so easy and fun to ride. It's so different than a car experience. You can take it on-road, off-road, highway speeds, low crawls. You can upgrade it with all sorts of parts. You can camp on it. You can commute with it. It's almost the definition of a motorcycle. And for me, that's why I ride. I ride to have the experience of motorcycling. And the CRF does that. Also, they added a pretty thick kickstand mount here, and I actually did have it parked out in the sandy desert and never had it fall down, so that's something to be said. But yeah, not necessarily the best beginner bike. We're going to talk about that more in our comparison here coming up with the 310 GS from BMW, but a great intermediate bike. And because I am an intermediate rider, I would certainly get one. So thank you all so much for watching. If you do want to see more on any of the bikes we've reviewed, check the link below to our motorcycle playlist. And we'll see you on the next one. I'm Charlie from Daily Motor, and as always, motorcycle on.